Hi everyone, welcome to week 1 of beginner web development. This week we'll be learning how to build a single page website, specifically a lemonade stand. Now to start off with our code, we're going to go to new project, view all projects, scroll down and click web lab. Make sure to set your age to at least 14 because code.org only lets students 13 and up use web lab. Now before we do anything, let's make sure to delete everything from the pre-made file so it looks like this. And when we start to build a website, the first thing we build is the HTML. HTML is a coding language that's basically like the skeleton of any website. It puts in all the components like headers, text, buttons, and so on. Now to start off our HTML code, we're going to type doctype HTML. This basically just lets the browser know what document type to expect. Next, we're going to type HTML_lang equals EN. This just sets the coding language to English. Next, we're going to type in head. After that, we'll type in meta_char_set equals UFT8. This tag just makes it possible to use emojis and other characters on our web page. Next, we're going to type in meta_name equals viewport, content equals width device width, initial scale equals 1.0. This line of code controls how a web page is displayed on different devices. After that, we'll start with our title of our website, using the code title, and then insert whatever you want to title it, and then title again. In this case, we'll title it Lemonade Stand because we're coding a lemonade stand website. Whenever you write a line of code, make sure to end it with this slash here, otherwise your code will show up with errors. After that, we'll write link rel equals stylesheet href equals style css. And finally, we'll close off our head writing arrow/head arrow. Now it's time to move on to the body of our code. When we start with the body of our code, we write the code arrow body arrow. First, we'll start off with creating the header of our website. We'll write header. Then we'll start off with the title, which we can name it Ducky's Lemonade. To start off with the title, we'll write H1. Then insert your title, in this case Ducky's Lemonade, and then close off the H1 with the slash. Next, to create our slogan, we'll just use regular text. The code for regular text is arrow P arrow. In this case, our slogan will be fresh lemonade, sunshine in a cup. And then we'll close off our code. And finally, close off our header. Now that we're done with our header, it's time to move on to the About section of our website. To create a section, we have to start it off with arrow and then section class equals. After the equal sign, you'll put in some quotation marks and you can name the class whatever you want. Since we're doing the About section, we'll name this class About. And then finally close it off with an arrow. Now obviously, we need to let the person know that this is the About section of our website, so let's title it. We'll use H2 to start off the title since it's smaller than the Ducky's Lemonade one. H1 stands for header 1 and H2 stands for header 2. The numbers go up to 6 and the size gets smaller with each number. And our title will be titled About Us. Then in smaller writing, let's write a bit about our website. We'll start it off with regular text. Our About section will read something like this. Welcome to Ducky's Lemonade, your neighborhood lemonade stand run by kids with big dreams and even bigger pictures. All our drinks are handmade with love and lemons. After writing About Us, we'll close off our section. Writing arrow/section arrow. Now that we're done with our About Us, it's time to move on to the menu section. Our menu section will look a bit similar, starting off with the section class equals, but this time we'll name it menu. We'll use the same code to title it, but this time using menu instead of About Us. Since menus are typically written in a list format, our code's going to look a bit different than our About Us. First, we'll write UL. This code is used to create a list of items. If we want to add any items to our list, we're going to have to use the code list item, written LI. We'll have about 4 items for this website. To start it off, let's do strawberry lemonade at $2.50. Following that, we'll have grape, melon, and kiwi lemonade, all at the same price to make it easier. After that, we can write arrow/UL to close off our list, and then arrow/section to close off our section. Our last section of code will be our Contact Us section. We'll start off with how we started our last two sections, naming it Contact this time. But this time, we're going to create a form, so they can fill out a form to contact us. First, we'll write out form. Then underneath, we'll create a label for the first section of our form. We want to have an area where they can put their name in, so we'll name it Name. This gray area of code is the only visible part that people will be able to see on our website. Then, to make it editable, we'll create an input, the type being text. Then, we'll create an area where they can edit it and put in their information. We'll start off with input type equals, and then put in text, because people are going to be texting in that area. Then, to make sure that the input area is right underneath name, we'll write an ID equals name, because that's the name of our label. To make it required, you'll just type in required, and then close it off with an arrow. Next, we're going to create the email portion of our Contact Us. We'll do the same code, but replace everything with email. Now, it's time to move on to the message portion. We'll start off the code the same way we started off all the others, but this time we'll use a text area instead of an input. The reason why we write down rows is so that the area can be a bit bigger than the rest. For this one, we'll just put 4 rows. Make sure to have quotation marks around that 4. And finally, we'll write required so they can't skip that part. Then we'll close off the text area. Finally, let's move on to the button portion. To create a button, we'll write button type equals, and then write submit, since this is going to be our submit button. Then we'll close it off with another arrow and write send. This gray text is going to put the title over the button so that people can know that this is a send button. Then we'll close off our button. After that, we'll close off our form, and then our section. Now we're on to the last part of our code. We're going to make a copyright for our lemonade stand. We'll start off with the code footer, and then in regular text, we'll write copyright 2025, Ducky's Lemonade, Stay Sweet. Then we'll close off our footer, then our body, then our HTML. And look at that! We already have a website. Now it's time to design it. To customize any code, using CSS is your best bet. CSS is basically like the makeup of your website. It controls everything like color, font, etc. Now to start off our code, let's write reset styles. This code basically reduces browser inconsistencies like default line heights, margins, and font sizes. After that, let's set the margin, padding, and box sizing. After that, we can now move on to the body of our website. We'll start off by writing body, and to set the font, we'll write font family and then whatever font we want. In this case, we'll use the font sans serif and Sego UI. Forgive me if I mispronounced that. After that, we'll customize the background color. Now to set colors in CSS, you have to use something called hex color code. Hex color code is a 6-digit code with a hashtag. It's used to represent different types of colors. If you don't know all of the hex color codes off the top of your head, that's okay. You can just search up a hex code picker. Since our website's about lemonade, I'll choose a yellowish color. I'll use FFFDF4. The color looks like this. Next, I'll set the main color. After I've set my color, I'll now set my line height. I'll set my line height to 1.6. Now that we're done with the body of our website, let's move on to the header. I'll start off with writing header. And just to remember, all of the brackets aren't the regular ones, they're the ones with the big squiggles in it. First, I'll set the background color of my header. I'll set my background color to FEF08A. It looks a bit like this. After that, I'll set my text align. Text align is basically to let the code know where you want the text to be placed. For this one, we'll put it in the center. After that, I'll set my padding. Padding defines the space between an element's content and its border. Next, I'll set the border bottom. Border bottom sets an element's bottom border, which is basically the bottom of the border. This part sets the size, And then this part sets the transparency. And of course this part is the color. It looks something like this. Next, I'll set the box shadow. Box shadow adds shadow effects around an element's frame. This text here is also another color model. It stands for red, green, blue, and alpha. Now that we're done with our header, let's move on to the title of our header. We'll start with writing header H1. We write H1 because that's the font size we used for Ducky's Lemonade. We'll set the font size by typing font size, and we'll set it to 2.8 REM. REM stands for root M. It's a unit of measurement. Next, we'll set the color, and we'll set it to hashtag B45309. After we set the color, we'll set the margin bottom size. The margin bottom size is basically the margin at the bottom. Now that we're done with our header title, it's time to move on to the slogan. We'll start off with writing header P. We write header P because P is the text that we use to write our slogan. We'll set the font size, and we'll set it to 1.2 rem. After that, we'll set the color to hashtag 92400E. Next, we'll set our sections. To start off, we'll write section, and this will set the design for all of the sections. We'll start with padding, and we'll size it at 2 rem, 1 rem. Then we'll set the max width. We'll set it to around 800 pixels. And lastly, the margin. We'll set it to auto. After we're done with our sections, we'll set the style for all the titles of the sections, so About Us, Menu, and Contact Us. We'll write H2, and then set the font size. We'll set the font size to 2 rem. After that, we'll set the bottom margin to 1 rem and the color to D97706. Now let's customize just the About section. To let our code know that we just want to customize the About section, we put .about. We'll set the background color to hashtag FEFC8 and the left border, so this part right here, to 5 pixels solid hashtag FDE68A. For our border radius, so how round we want the corners, we'll set it to 10 px. We'll set the padding to 1.5 rem and 2 rem, and then the top of the margin at 2 rem. Now let's move on to our menu. We'll set the background color to hashtag FFF7ED, and then the left of the border at 5 pixels solid, hashtag FDBA74. Then for the border radius, we'll have it at the same size at 10 pixels, and then the padding and margin top will be the same size as the About section. Now it's time to start off with our menu list. We'll start off by typing .menu UL, and we'll set the list style to none. Then we'll set the left padding to 0. After that, we'll move on to the menu list items. We'll set the margin to 0.75 rem 0, and then the padding to 0.5 rem. The background color will be set to hashtag FFFBEB, and then the border radius this time will be set to 6 pixels. The border itself will be 1 pixel solid at hashtag FDE68A. Then, lastly, we'll set the font weight to bold. Now that we're done with our menu section, it's time to move on to the Contact Us section. We'll start off how we did for all the other sections using .contact. Then we'll set the background color to hashtag ECFCCB. Then we'll set the border left to 5 pixels solid at hashtag A3E635. Then we'll set the border radius to 10 pixels like most of them. Lastly, we'll do the same padding and margin top settings and put the padding at 1.5 rem, 2 rem, and then the margin top to 2 rem. Now we'll move on to the form part of our code. First we'll type in form bracket, and we'll type out display flex so we can move these objects around. To edit the directions of the input areas, we'll type in flex direction. For this direction, we'll write column. Now let's move on to our labels. We'll type in label, and we'll set the top and bottom margins to 1 rem and 0.25 rem. Following that, we'll put the font weight at 600. Now let's move on to our input and text areas. For a shortcut, instead of copy and pasting your code to 2 different properties, you can just put a comma and edit both of them at the same time. We'll put a bracket, and then set the padding to 0.5 rem. After that, we'll set the border to 1 pixel solid, hashtag CCC, and then the border radius to 6 pixels. Then, we'll set the font size to 1 rem. Now moving on to the final area of our Contact Us section is the button. We'll set the margin top at 1 rem and the padding at 0.75 rem. Then we'll set the background color to hashtag FACC15. After that, we'll set the border to none and the color to hashtag 333. Next, we'll set the border radius of our send button to 6 pixels and the font weight of the send right here to bold. Next, to make sure our button turns our cursor into a pointer like how this remix button does, we'll write the code cursor : pointer : semicolon. Next, to make our button change into a different color every time we hover over it, we'll write transition background color 0.3 ease. Now to write the hover code, we'll write button : hover, and then add the background color that we want it to change to. In this case, hashtag EAB308. Now we're on to the last part of our code. We'll be designing our footer. We'll start off with footer bracket, and then make the text alignment center and the padding 1 rem. Lastly, we'll make the top margin 3 rem and the background color hashtag FEF08A. Now, let's refresh it. And now we have a fully designed website.